The fairy who carried a thorn. In the western forests, where the moss glowed after rain, and the mushrooms whispered stories to anyone short enough to listen, there lived a fairy named Primrose. She was not the kind of fairy humans put on teacups. She did not spend her days giggling on daisies or granting wishes to princes with questionable manners. She wore a cloak made from moth-wing silk, boots sewn from chestnut leaves, and a small sword at her hip, forged from a fallen meteor and sharpened on moonlight. Her wings were silver green, veined like leaves, and when she flew, the air smelled faintly of rosemary, rain, and old books. Primrose was a healer, a musician, a teacher of lost creatures, and, when the forest was in danger, a warrior. But Primrose also carried a thorn. Not in her hand, not in her foot, but deeper. It was an old thorn, twisted through the hidden places of her body. Some days it slept, some days it woke and burned like coal trapped under the skin. And some days it sent lightning through her hips, her belly, her back, down her legs, until even opening her wings felt like trying to unfold a map made of knives. The forest knew. The old badger knew and brought her bitter root tea. The owl knew and left silence outside her window. The fox pretended not to know because he wanted to appear cold and distant, but he always slept near her door on bad nights. The thorn did not make Primrose less magical, but it made magic much more expensive. When the other fairies danced for hours under the moon, Primrose sometimes watched from a mushroom stool, smiling while her fingers dug into her cloak. When the young ones asked why she didn't join, she would say, "Tonight I'm conserving moonlight." This sounded mysterious and elegant. Mostly it meant, "I'm in too much pain to stand, and if anyone pities me, I will personally turn their soup into mud." One morning, the forest bells began to ring. Not the little bells for rain, not the bride bells for weddings, not the scandal bells, which rang whenever the squirrels started another political revolution. These were the iron bells. They meant danger. Primrose woke before dawn to find a crow at her window. Its feathers were wet and its eyes were wild. "The lantern tree is dying," it said. Primrose sat up carefully. The thorn in her body was already awake, muttering threats in its ancient, unpleasant language. "The lantern tree cannot die," she said. "It is," said the crow. "The roots have gone dark." The lantern tree stood at the heart of the forest. Every fairy child knew the story. When the first night fell and the world became afraid of itself, a seed of sunlight was planted in the soil. From that seed grew the lantern tree, whose fruits glowed gold and kept the deep path safe. If it died, the forest would not merely become dark. It would forget how to hope. Primrose rose, too quickly. Pain flashed white through her body. She grabbed the window frame and swore so viciously that the crow took 3 steps backwards. "Are you well?" asked the crow. "No," said Primrose. "Can you come?" "Also no," said her body. But bodies, while very loud, are not the only voice in the room. Primrose looked toward the center of the forest, where the faint gold of the lantern tree should have been visible, above the canopy. It was gone. She fastened her cloak. "I can come," she said, "but I'm going to need help." "That is acceptable," said the crow. "It better be." She could not fly far that morning. Her wings trembled when she tried to lift. So she called the fox. He appeared from the bracken, pretending that he had not been waiting. "You look terrible," he said. "You look like a stolen rug," she replied. The fox yawned. "Climb on." "I can walk." "You can also argue with a tree stump for 20 minutes if it looks at you wrong. Climb on." So Primrose climbed onto the fox's back, and together they went through the waking forest. The animals watched her pass. Some bowed, some whispered, and some looked away, because they did not know what to do with a fairy who was both powerful and in pain. That was the strange thing. Many creatures could understand weakness, and many could understand strength. But very few knew what to do when the two arrived together, wearing the same face. At the lantern tree, the clearing was full of fairies. Tall fairies with glass crowns, river fairies with blue hands, meadow fairies dressed in pollen yellow, thorn fairies, cloud fairies, root fairies, dream fairies. And in the center stood the tree. Its branches sagged, its golden fruits were black, and the smell of wet ashes filled the air. The fairy council stood in a circle, speaking in urgent murmurs. "We need someone to descend into the root hollow," said Elder Lyre, whose beard was so long and disorganized that it gave home to 3 nesting sparrows. The crowd fell silent. Everyone knew that the root hollow was where all old poisons gathered. It was narrow, dark, and full of memories that had cradled underground. "I will go," said Primrose. Every head turned. Elder Lyre's expression softened, in the way people do when they are preparing to be unbearably reasonable. "Primrose," he said, "you are unwell today." "Yes." "The descent is painful, even for those with full strength." "How exciting for them!" "This may be too much." Primrose looked at the dying tree. She felt the thorn twist in her body. She felt the forest waiting. Then she said quietly, "I did not say I would do it as others do." The council murmured. Primrose raised one hand. "I will not run. I will not pretend my body is not carrying a thorn. I will go slowly. I will take help. And I will stop when I must. But I will still go." A young meadow fairy whispered, "But heroes do not need help." Primrose turned to her. "That," she said, "is propaganda written by lonely idiots." The fox snorted, and Elder Lyre hid a smile in his beard. They made a plan together, where everyone had a role. The root fairies opened the hollow. The spider folk wove a harness of silver thread. The moles mapped the tunnels. The owl gave Primrose a vial of night sight. The badger packed snacks, because badgers believe most disasters are worsened by bad nutrition. The fox said, "If you die, I will be very annoyed." "That will motivate me." Primrose descended. The root hollow was colder than stone, and it smelled of buried rain and old sorrow. The walls pulsed faintly around her. The veins of the lantern tree turned black by some creeping poison. Every step hurt, as the thorn inside her body answered the darkness with sparks of its own. At first, she tried to push through. 3 steps, 4, 5. Then the pain surged so hard that she collapsed to one knee. Above her, through the silver thread, the lyre called. "Do you need to come back?" Primrose pressed her forehead to the root wall. There it was, the old shame, the ancient fury. If I stop, they will think I'm weak. If I ask for help, they will think I should have never come. If I cannot do it like others, perhaps I should not do it at all. Then, from somewhere in the tunnel, a tiny voice said, "That sounds stupid." Primrose looked up. A glowworm was staring at her. "I beg your pardon?" "I said it sounds stupid," said the glowworm. "If you wanted normal, you should have sent a table. Tables are very stable." "Am I being judged by a worm?" "Glowworm," said the little worm, offended. "I'm professionally luminous." Primrose laughed. Not much, just enough to feel a bit better. The hollow listened. Then she pulled the silver thread twice, which was the signal for help they agreed on. Above, the spider folk tightened the harness, and the pressure lifted from her legs. Not all the pain disappeared, not even close, but enough weight left her body that she could move again. "Better?" called Elder Lyre. Primrose wiped her face. "Annoyingly, yes." She continued slowly, with pauses, with occasional swearing, and with the glowworm riding on her shoulder like a self-important lantern. At the deepest chamber, she found the cause. A black vine had wrapped itself around the heart-root of the lantern tree. Its thorns dripped silver venom. It pulsed with stolen light, and at its center was a creature like a wasp made of glass. "The egg witch," whispered the glowworm. Primrose knew the stories. The egg witch fed on hidden suffering. Not the wounds that bled openly, but the pain that people swallowed to remain convenient. Every unsaid "I can't," every smile over a scream, every apology made for needing rest. The witch drank it and spun it into venom. The egg witch turned. "Oh," she said, "another heroic little thing." Primrose drew her meteor sword. "I'm not little." "You are trembling." "Yes." "You're in pain." "Yes." "You're tired." "Widely." "You cannot defeat me like that." Primrose considered this. Then she sheathed the sword. "No," she said. "Probably not like that." The egg witch blinked. Primrose unfastened her cloak and sat down on a root. The glowworm whispered, "Is this strategy?" "Yes." "But you are just sitting." "Advanced strategy." The egg witch buzzed angrily. "Stand up." "No." "Fight me." "No." "But you came to save the tree." "Yes." "Then be heroic." Primrose looked up at her. "I am." And then she did something no fairy had ever done in the root chamber before. She told the whole truth. "I'm often in pain," she said, and the tunnel shook. The black vine tightened. "I cannot do things the way others would." A crack appeared in the venom. "I need help sometimes." The roots stirred. I'm not weak because I don't pretend to be well. The lantern tree gave a faint golden pulse. I'm not selfish because I have limits. The egg witch shrieked. I'm not less of a healer because I also need healing. Now the whole chamber began to glow. The silver thread above her shone bright. The spider folk felt it and began to sing. The moles joined in, rumbling deep in the earth. The owl called from above, and the badger, unclear on the musical plan, shouted encouragement and something about soup. Primrose drew her flute. The egg witch lunged. But Primrose played one note. Just one. It wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It was the sound of a locked door opening from the inside. The black vine split, and from every place where it cracked, trapped lights flew out. All of the swallowed truth of the forest. I'm tired. I need help. I cannot today. I still matter. I'm not my usefulness. I'm allowed to stop. I'm allowed to begin again, differently. The light struck the heart root. The gold returned. The egg witch tried to flee. But the glowworm puffed itself up to nearly twice its size, which was still very small, but an impressive achievement. Not today, you transparent mosquito! The heart root blazed, and the witch shattered into harmless rain. Above ground, the lantern tree burst into light. Every black fruit turned golden, and every branch lifted. The forest filled with warmth, and far away, in burrows and nests and little hidden houses, every creature who had been ashamed of needing rest suddenly felt something loosen in their chest. In the root hollow, Primrose lay back against the tree. She was shaking, exhausted, covered in dirt. Her thorn still hurt. Of course it did. Magic doesn't always remove the thorn. Sometimes magic just teaches the forest how to stop pretending that the thorn is not there. The silver harness lifted her gently back to the surface. When she emerged, the clearing erupted into cheers. The young meadow fairy ran to her, eyes wide. You saved the lantern tree! Primrose looked at the muddy boots, trembling wings, and the badger aggressively offering soup. Yes, she said, with assistance. But you sat down in the middle. I did. And you asked for help. Repeatedly. And you even swore. With artistic range. The young fairy frowned thoughtfully. So heroes can do that. Primrose smiled. Good ones can. From that day on, the forest changed. The fairy council built resting platforms along every long path. The spider folk made silver harnesses for anyone descending into difficult places. The badger founded a soup network and distributed food to all tired creatures. The fox became head of the sarcasm department and made everyone laugh. The glowworm became senior consultant. And at the foot of the lantern tree, they carved new words into the root gate. Not all heroes arrive unbroken. Not all magic is effortless. Not every battle is won by standing alone. Some are won by telling the truth, taking help, and continuing differently. Primrose still carried the thorn. Some days it slept, some days it burned, some days she cursed it with enough creativity to make the mushrooms blush. But when young fairies came to her, afraid because their wings were weak, or their hearts were heavy, or their bodies did not behave like others, Primrose would take them to the lantern tree. She would show them the golden fruit, And she would say, "This tree was not saved by pretending that pain did not exist." Then she would tap her sword, lift her flute, and grin. It was saved by a fairy who sat down, swore, asked for help, and still managed to use truth to scare the darkness badly enough that it left. And somewhere near her boot, a glowworm would add, "Also by excellent lightning." Primrose would roll her eyes, but she never disagreed.